Welcome to Sleepy Story Facts, where tonight's gentle bedtime journey carries you softly beyond the familiar roofs and sleeping streets of Earth, upward through the calm evening air, and into the peaceful darkness once traveled by the Apollo astronauts, where every quiet moment seemed to stretch wider and slower beneath a sky filled with patient stars. As this sleep story begins, there is nothing you need to accomplish, nowhere you need to travel, and no detail you need to remember. You may simply let the words drift around you like the faintest silver light on the surface of a sleeping lake. Make yourself comfortable now, allowing the bed beneath you to hold every tired part of you, allowing your shoulders to become loose and heavy, allowing your hands to rest without purpose, and allowing the small thoughts of the day to pass by without needing an answer. Perhaps you can imagine that you are lying inside a quiet Apollo command module, safely cushioned in its narrow, softly lit cabin, while outside the window, the universe remains vast, dark, and wonderfully still. There is no wind in space, no rustling tree branch, no rain against the glass, only the low, dependable hum of systems working gently in the background, each sound as steady as a slow breath. Fact number 1 is that Apollo spacecraft carried astronauts through the empty space between Earth and the Moon, a journey of roughly 240,000 miles. And for much of that voyage, there was little to see except the distant glow of home, the pale disk of the moon, and the endless velvet blackness between them. It was a silence unlike any silence on Earth, not an empty or lonely silence, but a deep and spacious quiet, filled with the feeling that the whole world was resting far below. Imagine now that the spacecraft has already left the busy blue world behind, and that Earth hangs in the window, round and luminous, wrapped in thin white swirls of cloud. From so far away, the continents cannot be heard arguing, the roads cannot be seen carrying hurried cars, and every ocean looks like one peaceful blue breath. The astronauts of Apollo 8 were the first humans to travel to the moon and orbit it in December 1968. And during their journey, they saw Earth rising above the lunar horizon, a delicate blue and white sphere appearing in the darkness beyond the gray, ancient surface of the moon. Fact number 2 is that this famous Earthrise was not like a sunrise on Earth, because the moon itself does not spin beneath an atmosphere full of changing color. Instead, Earth slowly appeared over the lunar landscape as the spacecraft moved in orbit, quiet and bright against a starless-looking sky. You may picture that sight now, not as something dramatic, but as something tender. A small home suspended in darkness. Every person you have ever known resting somewhere inside that distant blue glow. The Apollo astronauts moved at tremendous speeds. Yet inside their cabin, there were also long, slow intervals of waiting, observing, eating, checking instruments, and simply floating. Fact number 3 is that astronauts in the command module experienced weightlessness during much of their journey, because they and their spacecraft were falling freely together through space. In that gentle floating state, a pencil could drift beside a sleeping bag, a camera could hover near a window, and a small droplet of water could form a shining sphere, suspended without falling. Let your own body borrow a little feeling now, as though the weight you carried through the day has become softer, lighter, and less important. You are still safely supported by your bed, yet your thoughts may float freely, moving slowly through a calm inner sky. During Apollo missions, the command module was the astronauts' compact home, filled with switches, displays, food packets, checklists, and carefully arranged equipment. But at night, when the cabin lights were lowered and the crew prepared to rest, it could become a small, peaceful room traveling through an immeasurable dark. Fact number 4 is that the astronauts slept in sleeping bags secured inside the spacecraft, so they would not drift gently into panels or instruments while resting. There was no up or down in their weightless cabin, and a sleeping astronaut could rest beside a wall, beneath a window, or near the ceiling, as comfortably as if each direction had become equally calm. Beyond the spacecraft, the moon waited ahead, covered in quiet plains, softly rounded hills, and craters that had remained unchanged for millions of years. There was no weather sweeping across its surface, no rain falling into its ancient basins, and no wind moving dust across its open ground. Fact number 5 is that the moon has almost no atmosphere, which means its landscapes can remain still for extraordinarily long periods, holding footprints, tracks, and shadows with a kind of patient silence. Tonight, there is no need to hurry toward that distant lunar shore. For now, we remain in the gentle middle distance between worlds, where Earth is behind us, the moon is ahead, and the spacecraft moves onward with quiet purpose. Take one slow breath in and let it go without effort. Let the darkness behind your closed eyes become not empty, but velvety and protective. Let the steady imagined hum of the Apollo cabin become a calming narration beneath your thoughts, inviting you toward deep sleep, one peaceful orbit of the mind at a time. Now, as the Apollo command module continues its quiet path away from Earth, the blue planet behind the astronauts grows smaller by degrees so subtle that only patient observation can notice them, and the cabin becomes a little island of warm light drifting through an ocean with no shore. The journey toward the moon was not always filled with conversation or activity, because spaceflight also contained long, unhurried pauses, moments when the crew could look through a window, study a checklist, enjoy a meal, or simply listen to the faint mechanical breathing of their spacecraft. Fact number 6 is that the Apollo command module was designed as the crew's main living space during the outward and return journeys. And although it was compact, its carefully planned systems provided oxygen, water, temperature control, navigation, communication, and a place for the astronauts to rest. It was a small room, certainly, but it carried everything needed to sustain 3 people in the vast stillness between Earth and Moon. Imagine its walls around you now, curved and close in a comforting way, with gentle instrument lights glowing like faraway amber windows on a quiet winter evening. You do not need to touch any switch or read any number. The spacecraft knows its course, and all you are asked to do is rest within its calm enclosure. Fact number 7 is that Apollo crews traveled toward the moon using a maneuver called translunar injection, in which the powerful Saturn V rocket gave the spacecraft the the speed needed to leave Earth orbit and begin its long, curved journey outward. After that great push was complete, the astronauts entered a calmer phase of flight, coasting through space, while Earth's gravity slowly loosened its familiar hold, and the moon's gravity gradually began to welcome them closer. Though the spacecraft was moving quickly, the feeling inside could be surprisingly quiet, because there was no rushing air outside, no landscape passing beside a window, and no sound made by the silent darkness in the command module. Each small object had to be secured or carefully watched, because fact number 8 is that in microgravity, ordinary things do not remain where they are placed unless they are attached. A food packet might float gently near an astronaut's shoulder. A pencil might turn slowly in the air, and a checklist might hover like a pale leaf in an invisible current. This weightlessness was not magic, but the result of the spacecraft and everyone inside it falling together through space, moving along their graceful path around Earth and toward the moon. Perhaps your own thoughts can float in this same gentle way tonight, appearing briefly, turning softly in the darkness, and then drifting away without needing to land anywhere. The astronauts often looked back at Earth, and from their changing distance, the planet revealed a different kind of beauty from the one known by people standing on its surface. Fact number 9 is that from lunar distance, Earth appears as a bright sphere about 4 times wider in the sky than the moon appears from Earth, depending on exactly where the observer is traveling. Its blues, whites, and browns merge into one quiet world, wrapped in clouds and light, with no visible borders marking nations or cities. The thought can be deeply peaceful. All the familiar places of home, all the sleeping bedrooms, all the forests and harbors and distant roads gathered together in one small shining globe. In the command module, the sun could be brilliant beyond the windows, yet the surrounding sky remained black, because space has no atmosphere to scatter sunlight into blue. Fact number 10 is that astronauts could move from intense sunlight into deep shadow simply as their spacecraft changed position. And the difference between light and darkness in space could be sharp and clear. But tonight, we imagine only the soft middle light inside the cabin, the dim glow chosen for rest, gentle enough that the stars beyond the window feel close, but never overwhelming. Somewhere ahead, the moon is waiting with its ancient seas of dark volcanic rock, its pale highlands, and its countless quiet craters. The lunar surface has known sunlight and shadow for billions of years, receiving each without complaint, holding each in silence. Fact number 11 is that one lunar day from sunrise to sunrise lasts about 29.5 Earth days. So daylight and night on the moon unfold very slowly. A sunrise there does not hurry. A shadow there can take many Earth hours to cross a small patch of ground. Even time seems to soften when imagined on that distant, airless world. As the astronauts prepared for sleep during their journey, they followed schedules set by mission planners. Yet their bodies also carried the old rhythms of Earth, the need for rest, the wish for warmth, the comfort of familiar voices. Fact number 12 is that communication between the Apollo spacecraft and Earth the spacecraft traveled farther away, eventually requiring a delay of more than a second in each direction near the moon. A conversation with home, therefore, became slow and spacious, with small silences between each voice, as though even words had learned to drift gently across the dark. Let that slow rhythm settle around you now. There is no need for an immediate answer to anything. The day may wait beyond the walls of sleep, while you travel onward through this peaceful nighttime story, held by the quiet hum of the command module and the patient gravity of distant worlds. Earth is still visible behind you. The moon is growing nearer ahead, and between them lies a wide, calm corridor of stars, inviting you to soften, to settle, and to fall asleep. The quiet journey continues. And now, the moon no longer feels like a distant idea hanging somewhere beyond the glass, but a gentle companion growing slowly larger ahead of the Apollo command module. Its pale face marked by ancient plains and peaceful shadows that have rested undisturbed for longer than any human dream. Inside the cabin, the astronauts float in their small traveling home, surrounded by the quiet order of panels, straps, checklists, and softly glowing controls, while the great black sky beyond the windows remains still enough to make even the passage of time feel slow and wide. Fact number 13 is that the moon is about 1/4 the diameter of Earth. Yet, it appears so familiar from our planet, because it is much closer to us than any other world, traveling around Earth at an average distance of about 238,900 miles. As Apollo moved nearer, the moon began to fill more of the view, revealing a world of silver-gray textures, wide circular basins, and dark regions once mistaken for seas by early skywatchers. These dark places are called Maria, from the Latin word for seas, although they contain no water and no waves. They are broad plains of cooled volcanic rock, laid down long ago when the young moon was warmer and more active than it is today. Fact number 14 is that many of the lunar Maria were formed billions of years ago, when lava flowed into immense impact basins and slowly cooled into the darker surface that can still be seen from Earth on a clear night. Imagine these lunar plains below the approaching spacecraft, calm and level beneath a sky that never turns blue, where no cloud crosses the sun and no gentle rain ever falls. There's no weather on the moon in the earthly sense, because fact number 15 is that it has only an extremely thin exosphere rather than a breathable atmosphere. So there is no wind to stir its dust, no sound to travel through open valleys, and no soft movement of air around its hills. Everything outside remains perfectly quiet. Even the footprints left by Apollo astronauts could last for an extraordinarily long time, protected from rain and wind. Although tiny meteorite impacts and harsh sunlight gradually alter the surface over ages beyond ordinary imagining. For now, though, you do not need to walk there or prepare for a landing. You remain inside the warm command module, floating with gentle ease while the moon turns slowly in the window. The astronauts carried cameras to photograph the Earth, the moon, and the calm details of their spacecraft, preserving views that showed familiar worlds from unfamiliar distances. Fact number 16 is that Apollo 8 became the first crewed mission to orbit the moon, completing 10 lunar orbits in December 1968. While astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders looked down on a landscape no human being had seen from so close before. From orbit, the moon's horizon appeared nearby, because the world beneath them was much smaller than Earth, curving away into darkness with a delicate and surprising gentleness. You can imagine the command module drifting above that horizon now, not rushing, not straining, but moving in a long, graceful curve around a quiet celestial body. Each orbit carried the spacecraft briefly behind the moon, where its solid bulk blocked radio signals from Earth. Fact number 17 is that when Apollo spacecraft passed behind the moon, communication with mission control paused completely for a short time, creating a calm interval when the crew was beyond direct contact with home. Yet this was a planned and expected silence, part of the steady rhythm of lunar orbit, like a slow breath held for only a moment before being gently released. On the far side, Earth could not be seen at all. There was only the moon below, the stars beyond, and the small illuminated cabin carrying its travelers onward. In a peaceful bedtime story such as this, that hidden side of the moon can feel like a sheltered room of the universe, a place where the busy voices of Earth are temporarily quieted, where nothing arrives except the soft hum of the spacecraft and the measured breathing of those within it. Fact number 18 is that the far side of the moon is not permanently dark. It receives sunlight just as the near side does, but it faces away from Earth during much of the moon's orbit, keeping its landscapes hidden from ground-based observers. It is a place of mountains, craters, and ancient terrain, illuminated sometimes by sunlight and sometimes by the dark, always held in the same profound silence. As the command module continues around the moon, the sun may shine across crater rims, creating long shadows that lie gently over the ground. The lunar surface changes appearance with the angle of light, and even familiar craters can seem softer or sharper as shadows lengthen and recede. Fact number 19 is that without an atmosphere, sunlight on the moon creates very crisp shadows because there is no air to scatter light into the shaded places. Still, from the calm distance of orbit, these dark shapes need not feel harsh. They can seem like folds in gray velvet, resting quietly among the pale ridges and open plains. The moon asks nothing of you tonight. It simply turns below, ancient and silent, while the command module follows its gentle path. Let your breathing become as unhurried as that orbit. Let each exhale be a small release from the day, each quiet pause a little more space for deep sleep to arrive. Earth is waiting patiently beyond the far side. The moon is close beneath you, and this calming narration continues onward through the soft, starlit stillness of Apollo's peaceful lunar sky. As the Apollo command module glides farther along its peaceful lunar orbit, the familiar blue glow of Earth slips quietly out of sight behind the curved horizon of the moon. And for a little while, there is only the gray world below, the softly lit cabin around you, and the immeasurable darkness holding everything with such patient care that even the smallest thought seems able to rest. This is the far side of the moon, a place hidden from the people sleeping on Earth, not mysterious in a frightening way, but simply private and still, like the farthest room in a quiet house after everyone has gone gently to bed. Fact number 20 is that the moon rotates once on its axis in nearly the same amount of time that it takes to orbit Earth, which is why the same general side of the moon usually faces our world. The far side is not permanently dark, but it is usually unseen from Earth, receiving its own slow sunrises, its own long afternoons, and its own velvet lunar nights. As the command module passes above it, the astronauts have no direct radio contact with mission control for a brief and expected time. Because the solid moon stands between their small spacecraft and the distant antennas of home, there is something especially calming about this planned quiet, because nobody is lost, nobody is alone, and the signal will return in its proper time. For now, the crew simply follows a precise orbit, carried by the soft certainty of gravity around a world that has been waiting silently for billions of years. You may let that thought settle over you like a warm blanket. Everything that needs to continue can continue without your effort tonight. Your breathing can come and go by itself. Your body can sink more deeply into its resting place. The day can slowly move farther away, becoming as distant as Earth beyond the hidden lunar horizon. Fact number 21 is that the moon's far side has a different appearance from the near side, with many more craters and fewer of the broad, dark maria that are visible from Earth. Its surface is lighter, older looking, and richly textured with overlapping circular marks created across immense spans of time, each one resting in perfect silence beneath the unfiltered light of the sun. From orbit, the craters may appear like gentle bowls pressed into fine gray powder, their rims touched by light, while their interiors hold pools of shadow. There is no wind on the moon to move the dust along their edges, and no water to gather at their lowest places. Fact number 22 is that the lunar dust, called regolith, was created over very long periods as tiny impacts broke and ground the moon's rocks into a fine surface layer. It lies quietly across the plains and hills, keeping a record of ancient impacts, sunlight, and the occasional gentle touch of a spacecraft. In the cabin, however, there is warmth, air, and the low, steady sound of machinery. The astronauts might glance at a navigation display, make a simple note, or drift near a window while sunlight slowly shifts across the panels. Their spacecraft is traveling thousands of miles each hour, but it does not feel like rushing because there is no passing wind and no road beneath them, only a smooth motion through the dark. Fact number 23 is that a spacecraft in lunar orbit is continually falling toward the moon, while moving sideways quickly enough to keep missing it, tracing a long curved path around the lunar surface. It is a graceful kind of falling, one that becomes an orbit, and you may imagine your own thoughts doing something similar now, circling gently, never needing to arrive, becoming slower and softer with every quiet moment. The astronauts on Apollo missions followed carefully planned schedules. Yet there were still small human moments within their extraordinary surroundings. A sip of water, a meal floating neatly from its package, a quiet word exchanged with a crewmate, or a glance through the window at the old gray landscape below. Fact number 24 is that the Apollo spacecraft carried water partly produced by fuel cells, which combined hydrogen and oxygen to create electricity and water for the crew. Even this practical process can seem serene tonight, as though the spacecraft itself is quietly providing what is needed, drop by drop and breath by breath, while the moon turns beneath it. No grand action is required in this moment. There's only the measured passage of the orbit, the patient glow of instrument lights, and the silent lunar valleys sliding slowly below. Soon, the command module will emerge from behind the moon, and Earth will rise once more into view, returning not with noise or urgency, but with the tender blue presence of a familiar lamp seen from far away. Fact number 25 is that radio contact returned as Apollo spacecraft came around the lunar limb, allowing the crew and mission control to resume their calm, delayed conversation across space. But before that happens, remain here for another little while in the protected quiet of the far side, where the moon shelters you from the busy world, and the stars wait without asking anything at all. This gentle bedtime story can become softer now, quieter now, until the darkness behind your eyes feels peaceful and wide, and sleep begins to draw near like a distant Earthrise, slow, certain, and full of calm. And then, with no sound at all to announce it, the command module reaches the gentle edge of the moon's far side, and the familiar world of Earth begins to return, rising slowly above a distant gray horizon, as though it has been patiently waiting there throughout the long, quiet passage. Its blue oceans and white clouds softly illuminated by sunlight that has traveled across space without hurry. There is no sudden arrival in this nighttime story, only a gradual reappearance, a tender curve of color above the moon's ancient surface. And inside the cabin, the astronauts may feel the comfort of seeing home again, not because they had truly left it behind, but because even a world can seem precious when it is viewed from the stillness of lunar orbit. Fact number 26 is that Apollo 8's crew photographed the celebrated Earthrise view on December 24, 1968, while orbiting the moon, capturing Earth as a luminous sphere above the barren lunar horizon. The image helped many people understand, in one quiet glance, how small and delicate Earth appears in the wide darkness of space. From this distance, the planet has no visible traffic, no city noise, no individual worries written across its clouds. It is simply a softly glowing home, peaceful enough to fit within a window. You may imagine that every place you have known rests there, beneath the white weather patterns, gently turning through its own evening and morning, while you remain safe and warm in this small spacecraft, held by calm routines and the patient curve of the moon below. Fact number 27 is that Apollo astronauts did not always see Earth rise and set from the lunar surface in the same way it appears to rise and set from Earth. because the moon keeps nearly the same face toward our planet. However, an orbiting spacecraft changes its view continuously, allowing Earth to appear and disappear beyond the lunar horizon as the command module travels around the moon. Each orbit becomes a slow, repeating rhythm: quiet far side, gradual return, Earth in view, soft communication with home, and then another peaceful passage into lunar shadow. The spacecraft does not need to force this rhythm. Gravity carries it along, shaping its path with an invisible and dependable hand. Fact number 28 is that Apollo missions used carefully calculated lunar orbits, allowing the astronauts to circle the moon while conserving fuel and preparing for the next gentle steps of their journey. In this story, there is no need to think about calculations, numbers, or procedures. You may simply trust the orbit, as you can trust the rise and fall of your own breath. Each inhale arriving quietly, each exhale leaving even more quietly, until the muscles around your eyes, jaw, and shoulders begin to forget the work of the day. Beneath the spacecraft, the moon's surface passes in silence, its craters bright along one edge and shaded along the other, while the sunlight reaches into valleys that have waited millions of years for the same calm touch. Fact number 29 is that the moon's craters are largely preserved because there's almost no atmosphere, flowing water, or wind to erase them quickly. A crater made by an ancient impact can remain visible for an immense length of time, softened only gradually by further tiny impacts and the steady weathering of space. This makes the lunar world feel like a slow archive, where every ridge and basin has been resting for ages beyond counting. The astronauts might look down and recognize a broad, dark mare, a pale highland, or a familiar crater marked on their maps. But tonight, you do not need to name any of them. Let them remain unnamed gray shapes, quiet as thoughts that have already begun to fade at the edge of sleep. Inside the command module, the cabin air is carefully managed, refreshed, and kept at a safe pressure, while the instruments offer their calm, practical glow. Fact number 30 is that the Apollo spacecraft's environmental control system regulated the crew's oxygen, temperature, and the removal of carbon dioxide, making the small cabin a protected human shelter within an environment where no person could breathe outside. This quiet work of the spacecraft can be imagined as a gentle kind of care. Air moving softly through hidden passages, warmth held steadily inside the walls, and each small system doing only what it needs to do. Nothing is urgent, nothing needs your attention. The astronauts may send their voices across the distance to Earth, and after the brief travel time through space, people at mission control hear them reply. Fact number 31 is that radio waves travel at the speed of light, so the exchange between Earth and a spacecraft near the moon included a small but noticeable delay, making each conversation naturally spacious. In that spaciousness, there is room for silence. There is room for one voice to finish and another to arrive gently afterward. There is room, too, for you to stop following every thought. If a thought appears, let it float past the window like a small cloud seen from far above. If a memory comes, let it rest briefly in the soft cabin light then drift onward into the dark. Earth remains in view now, blue and white and far away, while the moon curves silently beneath you. The command module continues its peaceful orbit, and you continue your gentle bedtime journey with it, becoming heavier in your bed, even as the astronauts float, becoming quieter in your mind, even as the universe opens wide around you, and moving without effort toward the deep sleep waiting softly ahead. The command module continues around the moon, with the smooth, unhurried grace of a thought becoming quieter. And below its small windows, the broad gray expanse, known as the Sea of Tranquility, begins to come into view, stretching across the lunar surface, not as a sea of water, but as an ancient plain of dark volcanic rock, resting beneath the sun in a silence so complete that it seems to invite every busy feeling to become still. Fact number 32 is that the Sea of Tranquility, or Mare Tranquillitatis, was the landing region selected for Apollo 11, the mission that first carried human beings to the moon's surface in July 1969. From high above, it may look peaceful and nearly level, its darker terrain contrasting softly with the brighter lunar highlands around it. And yet, it holds a history written across billions of years, when molten rock once spread through an enormous basin and then cooled slowly beneath the open sky of space. There are no waves moving across this lunar sea, no salt air, no sound of water arriving at a shore, only fine gray regolith lying quietly under the sunlight, and craters resting like shallow bowls in the old volcanic plain. Imagine that you are looking down from the safety of the command module, where the cabin remains warm and gently lit, while below you the moon has no need for warmth, no need for weather, no need to hurry through a day. Fact number 33 is that Apollo 11's lunar module, named Eagle, separated from the command module Columbia in lunar orbit, carrying Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin down toward the surface, while Michael Collins remained in Columbia, circling the moon alone, but never truly isolated, following the same calm, carefully planned orbit. In this gentle sleep story, we do not need to follow the noise or effort of that descent. We can simply picture the quiet afterward, when the lunar module rested upon the powdery ground, and the command module continued its patient passage overhead, appearing and disappearing beyond the horizon with every orbit. The moon's curvature is close enough from its surface that a spacecraft in low lunar orbit can pass out of sight surprisingly soon, leaving the people below with only the stillness of their surroundings and the pale Earth hanging in their dark sky. Fact number 34 is that Earth appears nearly fixed in position when viewed from most places on the moon's near side. Because the moon keeps the same side facing Earth as it travels around it, this means that from the Sea of Tranquility, Earth would not rise and set each day as the moon does in our familiar sky. Instead, it would hover in one part of the darkness, slowly changing phase and gently shifting only a little over time. What a peaceful sight that would be. A blue and white world, far away and unhurried, suspended above a gray plain where no breeze can disturb the dust. You may let that image settle into your mind now, simple and soft, as though Earth itself or a small nightlight placed at the edge of a sleeping room. Fact number 35 is that the moon's gravity is about 1/6 as strong as Earth's gravity. So an astronaut standing there would weigh far less than they do at home, though their mass would remain the same. Every careful movement on the lunar surface became slow and floating. Every step a gentle lift and return. Every tool held with attention in the low gravity and airless quiet. But you do not need to take a step tonight. You may remain completely comfortable where you are, supported by your bed, while your imagination drifts lightly across the sea of tranquility. In the command module, the crew could watch the lunar landscape pass beneath them in steady stages, observing familiar landmarks, checking their position, and preparing for the next carefully timed moment of the mission. Fact number 36 is that Apollo astronauts used visual landmarks, onboard guidance systems, star sightings, and communication with Earth to navigate during their journeys. Yet even the most advanced navigation has its quiet intervals when the work is complete for the moment and the spacecraft simply continues along its path. The moon carries the command module onward, and the command module carries its crew onward, just as sleep can carry you onward once you stop trying to chase it. Let your breathing become slow enough to match the imagined orbit. Let each inhalation feel like the spacecraft rising gently over a lunar horizon, and each exhalation feel like the long, smooth glide above a quiet plain. Fact number 37 is that sunlight on the moon can make the surface appear bright, but the sky remains black even at lunar noon, because there is no substantial atmosphere to spread light overhead. The contrast between brightness and darkness is clear, yet the darkness itself is not empty. It is full of stars, distant worlds, and the soft presence of Earth. In the calm cabin, the windows frame all of this without asking you to understand it. You can simply notice the gray moon below, the dark sky beyond, and the small, warm circle of human shelter surrounding you. The Sea of Tranquility drifts peacefully behind the spacecraft now, becoming another quiet region of the moon held in memory and moonlight. Ahead, the orbit continues, slow and dependable. And with every gentle minute, you are invited to release a little more of the day, to let your thoughts become fewer, softer, and farther apart, until deep sleep feels as natural as the command module's silent curve through the lunar night. As the command module continues its slow, familiar path around the moon, the sunlight gradually softens along the curved surface below, and the ancient plains of gray stone begin to deepen into shades of blue-black shadow, until the lunar landscape seems less like a place of rock and more like a quiet dream resting beneath the stars. Inside the small cabin, there is still warmth, there is still air, and there is still the gentle, dependable hum of systems quietly doing their work. While outside, beyond the carefully sealed walls, the moon moves through its long and soundless night. Fact number 38 is that the Apollo command module was protected by a heat shield on its broad lower end. A strong layered structure designed to guard the astronauts during their eventual return through Earth's atmosphere. For now, though, it rests unseen beneath the crew's small living space, carrying no heat, making no demand, simply waiting patiently for a later part of the journey, while the spacecraft remains in the calm embrace of lunar orbit. You may imagine the cabin as a small, rounded room suspended in darkness, its instruments glowing softly enough to be reassuring, but not bright enough to disturb the growing sense of rest. Perhaps a checklist is secured near a panel. Perhaps a camera floats gently in its place. Perhaps a sleeping bag waits nearby, held safely against the wall, so that its occupant may rest without drifting slowly through the cabin. Fact number 39 is that astronauts slept in bags attached to the interior of their spacecraft, since in weightlessness there was no natural mattress beneath them and no downward pull to keep them still. There was no ordinary ceiling or floor in the command module, only surfaces chosen for convenience, meaning that an astronaut could sleep while facing almost any direction, floating peacefully in the soft, mechanical quiet. Tonight, you may borrow that feeling without leaving your own bed. Let the surface beneath you become steady and kind. Let the blankets around you feel like the protected walls of the spacecraft. Let the room beyond your closed eyes become as hushed as the space between Earth and the moon. The command module passes over a region where sunlight has already slipped behind the distant horizon, and the ground below is illuminated only by faint reflected light. Crater rims catching a little silver brightness while their interiors become dark, still bowls. Fact number 40 is that lunar night lasts approximately 2 Earth weeks in any one location, because the moon turns slowly and completes its cycle of daylight and darkness over nearly a month. During that long night, the sky remains black, the stars remain steady, and the landscape waits without wind or rain, held in a deep stillness that no earthly night can perfectly imitate. Yet there is nothing lonely in this imagined quiet. The astronauts are together in their small cabin. Earth is still present beyond the far horizon, and the moon itself carries them along its gentle curve, keeping them in orbit through the simple and invisible pull of gravity. Fact number 41 is that lunar orbit allowed astronauts to travel around the moon in roughly 2 hours, although the exact time depended on the altitude and shape of their orbit. Each circuit became a calm, repeating pattern: sunlight and shadow, Earth appearing and hiding, communication and brief silence, observation and rest. A pattern like this can be soothing, because there is no need to decide what comes next. The orbit already knows. The moon already knows. And your body, in its own quiet way, knows how to move towards sleep when it is given enough gentleness and time. Somewhere within the cabin, a crew member may speak softly to another, not with excitement, but with the ordinary calm of people sharing a small space and a meaningful task. The voices are human and familiar, softened by the knowledge that every word must travel carefully through microphones, radios, and the broad, dark distance back toward Earth. Fact number 42 is that the Apollo spacecraft used radio communications to send voice, data, and television signals between the crew and mission control, allowing people on Earth to follow the mission even from nearly 250,000 miles away. but during the quiet parts of the orbit, especially when the moon stood between the spacecraft and Earth, those signals paused, and the cabin entered a temporary private silence. You may picture that silence now as a gentle pause rather than an absence, like the calm space between one slow breath and the next. The command module drifts over another cratered region, where countless small impacts have marked the surface across unimaginable ages. Fact number 43 is that even tiny meteoroids can strike the moon, because there is no thick atmosphere to burn them up before they reach the ground. Over time, these quiet collisions have helped form the fine, powdery regolith covering much of the lunar surface, a soft gray layer that reflects sunlight and holds its place in the unmoving airlessness from high above. It looks peaceful, almost velvety, spread across hills, valleys, and ancient basins beneath the endless stars. There is no need to study every crater or remember every fact. This relaxing story asks only that you drift along with the spacecraft, wrapped in the slow movement of its orbit as the moon passes below, and the quiet cabin holds you in its warm circle of light. The astronauts may soon prepare for their own rest, securing loose items, dimming the lights, and settling into sleep, while the command module continues to travel onward without interruption. You can do the same in your own way now. Let your forehead smooth. Let your breathing settle into a calm rhythm. Let every thought that still feels sharp become softer at its edges until it fades into the dark, like a small lunar hill slipping beyond the horizon. The moon continues below. Earth waits patiently beyond it, and the peaceful journey carries you onward, deeper into the gentle stillness of night. The cabin lights have been lowered now, until only the most necessary instruments remain as tiny pools of amber and green against the walls of the Apollo command module. And the astronauts' small home becomes even more peaceful, drifting through lunar orbit like a lantern carried carefully across a vast dark sea. Outside, the moon continues beneath them, its ridges and craters passing quietly from soft sunlight into shadow, while the stars remain beyond the windows, clear and steady in the black sky, neither flickering nor rushing, simply waiting in their immense and ancient places. Fact number 44 is that stars do not twinkle when seen from space in the way they do from Earth, because twinkling is caused by moving layers of our atmosphere bending the starlight before it reaches the ground. From the Apollo spacecraft, with no atmosphere around it, the stars could appear as sharp, steady points of light, quietly scattered through the darkness, like small silver pins set into velvet. Yet the bright sunlight reflecting from the moon or the spacecraft itself often made them difficult to see through the windows. So the astronauts sometimes needed darkness and careful viewing conditions to notice the more delicate patterns of the sky. Tonight, you may imagine those stars anyway, calm and visible, spread so widely around the command module that there is no beginning or end to their patient arrangement. The crew is preparing for rest, and each object inside the cabin has been placed or secured with the calm attention that life in weightlessness requires. A pencil is tucked away. A checklist is fastened to a panel. A food packet rests under strap. Fact number 45 is that astronauts had to keep tools and personal items attached, contained, or carefully placed during Apollo missions, because even a small object could float gently away in microgravity and become difficult to retrieve in the compact cabin. There is something comforting in this simple order. Every object has a quiet place. Every task is complete for now, and the spacecraft itself continues onward without needing to be watched. Every moment, the astronauts can settle into their sleeping bags, which are fastened against the cabin walls. And though they have no mattress pressing upward beneath them, their bodies are held comfortably in place by the soft fabric and the enclosed warmth of the command module. Fact number 46 is that weightlessness can make sleep feel unfamiliar at first, because the body does not experience its usual pressure points against a bed. But astronauts still rested during missions by following routines, using secured sleeping arrangements, and allowing the steady rhythm of the spacecraft to become familiar. Imagine that the gentle hum around them is like a faraway fan on a quiet night, consistent and low. A sound that asks nothing, but invites the mind to loosen its hold on the day. In the darkness beyond the module, the moon turns below with no sound of its own. It has no forests whispering in a breeze, no waves meeting a shore, no animals moving through the night, and no rain tapping against its silent stones. Fact number 47 is that sound needs a material medium, such as air, water, or solid matter, to travel. And because the moon has almost no atmosphere, an unprotected person standing on its surface would hear no ordinary sound through the open lunar landscape. Inside a spacesuit or spacecraft, however, voices and machinery can be heard through air and through the structure of the vehicle, creating a small, protected world of sound surrounded by the enormous quiet outside. This is not an empty quiet, but a peaceful one, made gentle by the knowledge that the command module is sealed, warm, and carefully designed to care for its crew. The moon's gravity continues to guide the spacecraft around its curved path, and each orbit passes with the patience of a slow breath. Fact number 48 is that the command module did not need to fire its engine continuously to stay in orbit. Once it was traveling at the proper speed and altitude, lunar gravity and its forward motion carried it around the moon in a smooth, repeating fall. You may picture the orbit as a soft circle drawn in darkness, not perfectly still, yet never hurried, returning again and again to the same broad regions of light and shadow. Soon, the spacecraft moves toward the far side once more, and the gentle glow of Earth slips below the lunar horizon. For a short while, all radio contact with home pauses, not as a cause for concern, but as part of the regular rhythm that Apollo crews and mission controllers understood well. Fact number 49 is that the moon blocks radio signals between Earth and a spacecraft traveling behind it, producing a temporary communications blackout during each far-side pass. The astronauts knew that the signal would return when the command module rounded the lunar limb again. And so this quiet interval could be accepted as naturally as the pause between one page of a bedtime story and the next. There is no message you need to receive tonight. There is no reply you need to send. You may simply rest in this sheltered farside silence, where the old moon fills the view below, and the cabin holds its soft circle of light around you. Fact number 50 is that the moon's surface preserves an extraordinary record of the solar system's past. Because its craters, volcanic plains, and rocks have endured without the constant reshaping caused by Earth's weather, oceans, and shifting atmosphere beneath the module. Every quiet basin and pale ridge has waited through ages beyond measure, and none of it asks you to stay awake. Let your thoughts become as still as those lunar plains. Let them settle softly, one by one, like fine dust falling where there is no wind. The spacecraft continues its calm arc behind the moon. The stars hold their places beyond the glass, and the gentle bedtime journey carries you farther from the noise of the day and nearer to the soft, welcoming edge of deep sleep behind the moon. The command module has traveled through its familiar interval of sheltering silence, where Earth's voice cannot reach the cabin, and the blue planet remains hidden beyond the old gray curve below. But now, little by little, the spacecraft approaches the lunar edge once more, and a thin, bright line begins to gather beyond the horizon, carrying with it the gentle promise of home. The cabin is still dim and restful, its soft instrument lights glowing quietly beside sleeping bags, straps, and carefully secured equipment, while the astronauts float in the warm air of their small traveling world, protected from the great cold stillness outside by layers of thoughtful engineering. Fact number 51 is that the Apollo command module was built to support its crew during the long journey to the moon and back, serving as their navigation center, communications room, sleeping space, and safe return capsule. Every switch and display had its purpose. Yet, during these unhurried hours, the most comforting thing may have been the simple knowledge that the spacecraft was continuing exactly as it should, following its patient curve around the moon. You may imagine that calm certainty settling around you now, like a blanket becoming pleasantly warm, because nothing needs to be solved in this moment, and every thought may be allowed to slow down until it becomes quiet enough to drift away. The moon's distant horizon comes closer in the window, smooth in some places, and softly uneven in others, shaped by ridges, crater rims, and ancient highlands that have remained beneath the stars for longer than the history of any living thing on Earth. Fact number 52 is that the moon is thought to have formed about 4.5 billion years ago, likely after a massive collision early in the history of the solar system, sent material into orbit around the young Earth, where it gradually gathered into the familiar companion world we see today. Over countless ages, it cooled collected craters and became the serene gray sphere that guided travelers, poets, sailors, and dreamers long before Apollo ever left the ground. Tonight, it does not need to be understood in full. It can simply remain below the spacecraft, old and quiet, holding its pale surface beneath the dark. As the command module moves beyond the far side, Earth appears again, not all at once, but as a slow rising curve of blue and white above the lunar landscape. Fact number 53 is that Earth's atmosphere makes our planet look blue from space because sunlight is scattered by the air and reflected by the vast oceans, while bright clouds add their softly changing white patterns from lunar orbit. That thin blue atmosphere appears delicate, a faint outer layer around the whole world, and it is easy to imagine every familiar sound of Earth resting beneath it: sleeping cities, distant forests, quiet rooms, soft rain on roofs, and the gentle breathing of countless people who may never look up and know that a small spacecraft is circling the moon. The astronauts might feel a renewed closeness to home as radio contact returns, and the brief gap in communication gives way to voices crossing the distance once more. Fact number 54 is that Apollo crews communicated with mission control through radio systems connected to large tracking stations on Earth. And because radio signals took more than a second to travel between Earth and the moon, every exchange contained a small, natural pause. Those pauses can feel especially peaceful tonight. They remind us that not every silence must be filled, and not every question must be answered immediately. There can be space between words, space between breaths, and space between the last busy thought of the day and the first quiet feeling of deep sleep. Below, the lunar surface passes from darkness into sunshine again, and the sharp line between night and day moves across mountains and plains. Fact number 55 is that this moving boundary of sunrise or sunset is called the terminator. And on the moon, it can reveal surface details clearly because the low angle of sunlight creates long shadows across craters and ridges. From orbit, the terminator may look like a soft boundary between two kinds of rest. One side silver gray and bright, the other deep and velvety, both equally calm. The command module glides above this gentle division without effort, carried forward by its orbital motion, while Earth remains suspended in the distance, blue and serene. In the cabin, perhaps one astronaut is awake, quietly observing the view while the others rest. Or perhaps all three are speaking in low voices, sharing a simple remark about the changing landscape. Fact number 56 is that Michael Collins, who remained in the command module during Apollo 11's lunar landing, made repeated solo orbits around the moon, while his crewmates explored the surface below. During each far-side pass, he was temporarily beyond contact with both Earth and the lunar module. Yet, he remained connected to the mission by its steady plan, the reliable systems of Columbia, and the knowledge that the moon would soon carry him back into view. That is a gentle lesson for this relaxing story. Even when the familiar world is briefly hidden, it has not disappeared. It is simply waiting beyond the horizon, ready to return in its own quiet time. As the Earth hangs once more in the window, let its distant blue glow become a peaceful point for your attention. Breathe in slowly, as though drawing in the cool, clear color of its oceans. Breathe out slowly, as though releasing every small leftover concern into the wide, harmless darkness. The command module continues onward, its cabin calm, its orbit dependable, its windows filled with the moon below and Earth beyond. You do not have to travel any farther than this gentle moment. You may float here in the softness of the night, listening to the imagined hum of Apollo's quiet cabin, allowing the words of this bedtime story to become slower, lighter, and more distant, until sleep arrives as naturally as Earth, rising over the silent rim of the moon, with Earth now resting once again in the command module's window. A soft blue and white globe shining above the quiet gray curve of the moon. The spacecraft called Columbia continues its slow circle through lunar space, carrying its crew with the same gentle steadiness that has guided every orbit so far, and inviting you to let the rhythm of this peaceful passage become the rhythm of your own settling mind. Fact number 57 is that Columbia was the name of Apollo 11's command module, the small conical spacecraft that carried Michael Collins in lunar orbit, while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin traveled down to the surface in the lunar module Eagle. It was a compact place for one person to spend long periods alone, but it was never a place without purpose, because every orbit brought Columbia back above the landing site, back into contact with Earth, and back toward the moment when the lunar module would rise gently from the surface to meet it again. Tonight, there is no need to think about the effort of that meeting, or about schedules, engines, and numbers. We remain instead with the calmest part of the journey, Columbia gliding onward, its curved windows framing the moon below and the soft, distant Earth beyond. Fact number 58 is that the command module's windows were made from several layers of special glass, carefully designed to protect the astronauts, while still allowing them to observe the beauty and detail of space. Through those windows, the moon could seem near enough to touch, although it remained far below, while Earth could seem small enough to hold in an open hand, though it contained every shore, city, field, and sleeping room the astronauts had ever known. Perhaps you can picture one quiet astronaut drifting toward a window, moving slowly in weightlessness, and pausing simply to look. Nothing needs to be said. The view itself is enough. Ancient lunar ground beneath, peaceful Earth above, and the deep black sky all around. Fact number 59 is that Apollo crews used a sextant and telescope within the command module's navigation system to take sightings of stars, helping them verify their position and orientation in space. These instruments turned the distant stars into gentle points of reference, quiet companions that remained where they were expected to be, while the spacecraft moved through its measured orbit. The idea is soothing in its simplicity. Even in the enormous darkness, there were familiar patterns, steady lights, and dependable paths. Your own room can be like that now. The bed beneath you remains where it is. The air around you remains calm. Your breathing can become your quiet point of reference, returning again and again without needing any instruction. Beneath Columbia, the moon's surface continues to slip past, revealing broad lava plains, pale highlands, and cratered regions shaped by the slow history of the solar system. Fact number 60 is that lunar highlands are generally older and brighter than the darker Maria, and they contain many more craters because they preserve the marks of ancient impacts across vast spans of time. Their hills and ridges have known long sunlight and long darkness, each lasting for days, yet nothing on the moon experiences them with hurry. A shadow moves gradually along a crater wall. Sunlight reaches slowly across a ridge. Fine dust lies exactly where it settled, undisturbed by wind. Let your thoughts become like that lunar dust now, no longer blown about by the busy weather of the day, but gently settling into stillness. In the cabin, the low hum of fans and life support equipment continues, creating a small and reassuring soundscape around the astronauts. Fact number 61 is that spacecraft need fans to circulate air, because in weightlessness, warm air and carbon dioxide do not naturally rise away from a person in the same way they do on Earth. The quiet movement of air inside Columbia therefore helped keep the cabin safe and comfortable, surrounding the crew with an invisible, steady care. You may imagine that low hum becoming softer and farther away, like a gentle, calming narration beneath the surface of sleep, present but never demanding your attention. As each orbit carries Columbia along, the Earth changes its position in the window, sometimes visible above the moon's horizon and sometimes hidden behind it. Fact number 62 is that the Earth seen from the moon goes through phases, just as the moon seen from Earth does, because sunlight illuminates different portions of each world as they move through space. A nearly full Earth can appear especially bright from lunar orbit, glowing with oceans and clouds, while a crescent Earth can look delicate and thin, like a curved blue lantern set against the black. Whatever phase it holds tonight, it remains gentle, distant, and quietly alive. Somewhere under those white clouds, evening is arriving for some people, morning is beginning for others, and many are already sleeping, unaware of the slow journey circling above the moon. Fact number 63 is that an Apollo spacecraft could orbit the moon many times while its crew completed observations, rested, communicated with Earth, and prepared for the next phase of the mission. Orbit after orbit, the same peaceful sequence returns. The bright near side, the quiet far side, the brief pause in communication, the slow return of Earth, and the warm light within the cabin. There is comfort in repetition when nothing in it needs to be rushed. Let this sleep story repeat its calm message as well. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to become quiet. And you do not need to carry the whole day with you into the night. The moon continues below. Columbia continues above it. And the stars remain steady beyond the glass, while you drift gently toward the soft, undemanding quiet of deep sleep as Columbia follows its patient path away from the bright near side of the moon. Earth gradually lowers behind the rounded gray horizon, its soft blues and whites slipping from the window so slowly that the change feels less like a disappearance and more like the closing of a familiar, well-loved book. And soon, the command module enters once again into the sheltered quiet of the lunar far side, where the moon stands peacefully between the astronauts and every signal from home. Fact number 64 is that the far side of the moon was first photographed in 1959 by the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3, revealing a landscape strikingly different from the face people see from Earth, with brighter highlands, dense cratering, and relatively few of the dark volcanic maria that that form the familiar patterns of the near side from Columbia's window. These far-side highlands stretch beneath the spacecraft in long, pale folds, each crater and ridge resting quietly under the sharp sunlight or the tender darkness of lunar night. There are no roads crossing those plains, no lights glowing in distant homes, no voices traveling through the valleys, and no need for anything to move more quickly than it already does. The astronauts are not cut off in any troubling sense, because this interval of radio silence is expected, measured, and repeated with each orbit. Mission Control knows where Columbia is. The crew knows that Earth will return to view, and the Moon simply holds this brief moment of privacy around them. Fact number 65 is that radio waves travel in straight lines, which is why the solid body of the Moon blocks communications during a far-side orbit until the spacecraft emerges around its edge again. This means that for a short time, the cabin can become a small, quiet island, carrying its warm air, careful supplies, and sleeping human travelers through a darkness so peaceful that even the notion of distance becomes soft. Perhaps now you can imagine the sound inside Columbia. The low circulation of air, the tiny mechanical hum of systems, the occasional muted movement of fabric against a sleeping bag, and beneath it, all the easy rhythm of breathing. Outside, there is no sound at all, because the near vacuum of space cannot carry it from one place to another. Fact number 66 is that space itself is largely silent to human ears. Although instruments can detect waves, particles, and other forms of activity that our ears cannot hear directly. For the astronauts, however, the silence beyond the spacecraft was made gentle by the presence of their sealed cabin, a small human refuge moving safely through the immense dark. You can let your own room become like that refuge tonight, protected and still, with the outside world no longer requiring anything from you. Let the edges of the day move farther away. Let each unfinished thought become a tiny object gently secured in its proper place, no longer floating freely through your mind. Beneath Columbia, crater shadows lengthen across the far-side terrain, and the slow angle of sunlight gives the surface a soft, sculpted appearance, as though the Moon has been covered in countless shallow bowls, rounded hills, and quiet silver valleys. Fact number 67 is that many of the Moon's craters were formed when asteroids and meteoroids struck the surface at enormous speed. But over immense periods of time, their sharp forms have been softened by later impacts and the gradual effects of sunlight, radiation, and tiny particles arriving from space. Even these changes happen with extraordinary patience. A landscape can remain almost the same for millions of years, holding its silence while worlds below it change, grow, build, dream, and sleep. The astronauts may use this far-side time to look at instruments, make notes, or simply rest, knowing that their spacecraft is guided by the dependable laws of motion and gravity. Fact number 68 is that Apollo's onboard computer, known as the Apollo Guidance Computer, helped astronauts navigate, monitor their flight path, and perform important mission tasks, despite having far less computing power than an ordinary modern phone. Its work was precise and quiet, translating the language of position, velocity, and time into a steady course through space. Yet tonight, you do not need to calculate anything. You do not need to know where tomorrow is leading, like Columbia. You may simply continue along the gentle path already beneath you, supported by the natural rhythm of breath, rest, and the passing night. As the command module glides over the hidden hemisphere, its direction remains smooth and sure. Fact number 69 is that Columbia orbited the moon at an altitude that could vary during the mission, but it often traveled roughly 60 nautical miles above the lunar surface, high enough to follow its broad, curved path, while still giving the crew a close view of the terrain below. At that distance, the great craters are clear, and the horizon seems close, but the moon remains vast enough to fill the windows with a world of gray quiet. The far side asks for no response. Its old mountains do not need to be named. Its shadows do not need to be explored. They can remain exactly as they are, resting beneath the stars, while the spacecraft moves gently onward. Soon, though not yet, Columbia will approach the lunar limb, and Earth will return with its familiar blue glow, along with the slow voices of home crossing the darkness. Until then, stay within this calm passage behind the moon, where the cabin is warm, the instruments are dim, the stars are steady, and the nighttime story becomes softer with every orbit. Allow your eyelids to feel pleasantly heavy. Allow your breathing to lengthen without effort. Allow the quiet of this hidden lunar sky to carry you a little deeper towards sleep, until the gentle hum of Columbia seems to drift farther and farther away, like a small lantern moving peacefully across an endless velvet sea. Within Columbia, the quiet has deepened into the kind of stillness that makes each small light seem warmer, each slow breath more noticeable, and each gentle sound of the spacecraft feel like part of a peaceful rhythm that has been continuing long before this moment and will continue long after sleep has arrived. The far side of the moon remains beneath the command module, broad and pale where sunlight reaches it, soft and almost blue-black where the long lunar shadow has settled. And all around the little spacecraft, the stars wait in their silent distances, steady beyond the glass. Fact number 70 is that the Apollo command module was only about 12 feet wide at its broadest point, a remarkably small living space for 3 astronauts traveling so far from Earth. Yet its close walls, carefully arranged controls, and reliable life support systems made it a protected home in the vastness between worlds. There's something comforting in imagining this smallness tonight, not as confinement, but as shelter. A warm circle of air, a few dim instruments, familiar voices nearby, and a strong hull holding back the cold quiet of space. You may imagine yourself there without needing to move, floating peacefully in the soft cabin light, while the moon turns slowly below, and every ordinary concern from Earth becomes too distant to require your attention. The astronauts had brought personal items with them, small reminders of home and of the lives waiting below the clouds, because even on a journey to the moon, a human heart could appreciate familiar things. Fact number 71 is that Apollo astronauts were permitted to carry small personal preference kits containing carefully selected mementos, such as photographs, flags, patches, or meaningful keepsakes, all limited in size and weight for the practical needs of the mission. These little objects floated in the cabin like quiet threads, connecting the travelers to the blue world beyond the moon. And perhaps that is why the command module could feel less like a machine and more like a temporary home. Tonight, you may let your own surroundings become gentle reminders of safety. The weight of your blanket, the familiar shape of your pillow, the quiet air of your room, and the knowledge that rest does not need to be earned before it can begin. Far below, the far side highlands continue to pass beneath Columbia, their ancient craters overlapping one another in soft patterns of light and shade. Fact number 72 is that the lunar far side has a thicker crust than much of the near side, which is one reason it has fewer broad, dark maria formed by ancient lava flows. Its surface appears more heavily cratered and more rugged, like a quiet stone garden shaped over billions of years by time, sunlight, and tiny impacts. Yet, from the peaceful height of orbit, even this ruggedness seems softened by distance. The craters become gentle circles. The mountains become low gray waves. The old scars of impacts become part of one unbroken, restful landscape. There is no need to examine them closely. Let them pass below, as slowly as clouds might pass beneath a high, quiet airplane. Though here there are no clouds at all, only the silent moon and the small, warm spacecraft above it. In Columbia, the astronauts could eat, drink, sleep, observe, and work while floating in microgravity, adapting their ordinary routines to a world where nothing naturally stayed on a table or settled into a cup. Fact number 73 is that Apollo food was prepared in compact packages, often rehydrated with water or designed to be eaten in small bites, helping prevent crumbs from drifting through the cabin and entering delicate equipment. Even a meal could become a quiet, careful ritual in space. A packet secured in place, a sip of water held in its container, a slow moment shared among crewmates while the moon moved far below. You do not need any rituals now, except the simplest one of all. Breathing in gently, breathing out slowly, and allowing your body to become more comfortable with every exhale. If your mind still carries a little movement from the day, imagine placing each thought into a small, neatly fastened compartment within Columbia, where it can rest until morning without needing to be opened. The spacecraft continues its orbit with no visible effort, and the cabin remains balanced between human care and the deep order of the universe. Fact number 74 is that the Apollo guidance computer used a display and keyboard called the DSKY, pronounced DISKY, through which astronauts entered commands and received information about the spacecraft's systems and trajectory. Its small lights and numbers helped guide a journey of extraordinary precision. But in this calm moment, the displays need only glow quietly, like a few distant windows in a sleeping town. The astronauts have checked what must be checked. The orbit is continuing. The moon is holding them in its gentle gravitational curve, and the long route back to Earth will wait until its own proper time. Soon, Columbia will begin to approach the lunar horizon that faces home. But for now, the far side still offers its peaceful cover, its brief interval away from conversation and instruction. Fact number 75 is that the moon's far side allowed Apollo crews to experience regular periods without Earth in view, making the command module briefly the only human-made shelter visible above that hidden landscape. Yet even here, surrounded by dark space and old lunar stone, the astronauts were never without direction. Their orbit had shape. Their mission had rhythm. Their home planet remained just beyond the curve of the moon. Let that gentle certainty remain with you as this sleep story grows quieter. You are safe where you are. Nothing needs to be done. The low imagined hum of Columbia can fade into the background. The moon can continue its silent turning below, and your thoughts can become fewer and farther apart until they are as still as the far side dust resting under the patient stars. As Columbia rounds the patient curve of the lunar horizon, the far side's private stillness begins to soften. And there, rising once more beyond the gray ridges of the moon, is Earth, small, blue, white, and quietly radiant, floating in the darkness with such delicate calm that it seems less like a distant planet and more like a familiar lamp left glowing for someone returning home late at night. Inside the command module, the warmth of the cabin remains steady. The soft lights of the instruments remain low, and the astronauts continue to float within their small protected world, while below them, the moon's ancient surface glides by in long, peaceful stretches of shadow and silver light. Fact number 76 is that during Apollo 11, Michael Collins orbited the moon in Columbia, while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were on the lunar surface, completing orbit after orbit with the certainty that the lunar module Eagle would eventually return to meet him in space. Although Columbia traveled alone above the moon during those passes, it was part of a careful and connected journey, linked to the astronauts below, the flight controllers on Earth, and the quiet laws of gravity that held every moving part of the mission in its proper path. Tonight, we can imagine the moment not as a tense wait, but as a long, gentle pause, with Columbia circling patiently above the sea of tranquility, trusting the rhythm already written into its course. Earth shines beyond the window, and the moon turns below, while the command module moves onward as smoothly as a slow exhale. Fact number 77 is that the lunar module's ascent stage was designed to lift off from the moon after the surface mission, leaving its lower descent stage behind on the lunar ground. The ascent stage carried the astronauts upward from the quiet plains, rising into the black lunar sky where there was no air to roar around it, no clouds to pass through, and no blue horizon waiting above. Only the stillness of space and Columbia moving peacefully somewhere ahead. But we need not hurry toward that moment yet. We can remain with the command module in its warm orbit, where the astronaut inside may glance down at the moon's pale surface, knowing that his companions are safe below, while all around him the stars remain clear and unmoving. Fact number 78 is that the moon has only about 1/6 of Earth's gravity, so the ascent stage required much less energy to leave the lunar surface than a spacecraft needs to leave Earth. This gentle difference in gravity allowed the lunar module to rise from the moon in a clean, carefully planned path, gradually returning its crew to the waiting command module. Imagine it as a quiet reunion rather than an arrival. Two small human shelters, each traveling through the same dark stillness, slowly drawing closer, while Earth watches from afar. In the command module, every object remains secured. Every display offers its small pattern of lights and figures, and the low sound of circulating air continues its dependable work. Fact number 79 is that Columbia used fuel cells to generate electricity by combining hydrogen and oxygen, producing water as a useful byproduct for the crew. In this way, the spacecraft quietly transformed simple stored materials into power, drinking water, and the energy needed for its instruments. Like a tiny, self-contained home, gently caring for the people inside it. There's something soothing about this hidden order. The idea that even far from Earth, the cabin has what it needs for this moment. Air to breathe, light to see by, warmth against the cold, and a steady orbit carrying it safely onward. You may allow your own body to recognize what it needs as well. A comfortable stillness, an easy breath, and permission to release the need to keep watch over the night. Fact number 80 is that lunar rendezvous required the command module and lunar module to meet, while both moved swiftly in orbit around the moon, using careful navigation and controlled engine burns to bring them together. Yet from our peaceful imagined distance, their paths can seem almost graceful, like two pale leaves floating slowly toward one another on a perfectly calm pond. No sound reaches across the open space between them. No wind pushes them away. Only quiet calculation, patient motion, and the soft, invisible guidance of gravity bring them nearer. As the reunion approaches, Columbia keeps circling above the old lunar plains, passing over craters whose shadows lie dark and cool, over highlands brightened by the sun, and over the sea of tranquility, where human footsteps have gently marked the dust. Fact number 81 is that the Apollo 11 astronauts left a plaque on the descent stage of Eagle, carrying a message of peaceful arrival from the people of Earth. The plaque remains on the moon, resting in the same airless stillness as the lander itself, beneath sunlight that slowly moves across the ground and stars that rise without any sound. It is a quiet reminder that human exploration can also contain moments of gentleness, reflection, and care for the shared world left behind. Now Earth remains visible beyond Columbia's window, a rounded blue home held in darkness, while the moon remains below, pale and silent, and the command module follows its calm circle between them. Fact number 82 is that Apollo spacecraft eventually left lunar orbit by performing a trans-Earth injection burn, beginning the long coast home after their work around the moon was complete. But that journey is still waiting ahead, like morning waiting beyond the deepest part of night. For now, let everything remain unhurried. Let Columbia continue its soft orbit. Let Earth glow quietly in the distance. Let the moon keep its ancient silence beneath you. And let your thoughts become as light as a small object floating safely inside the cabin, no longer pulled toward the concerns of the day, simply drifting, resting, and slowly carrying you toward the quiet comfort of deep sleep. Above the silent sea of tranquility, Columbia continues its slow, untroubled circle. And inside its small, warm cabin, Michael Collins waits as the moon passes beneath him in quiet shades of pearl, charcoal, and silver. While far beyond the curved lunar horizon, Earth remains a delicate blue presence in the endless dark, seeming almost still from this calm and distant place. The waiting is not empty, because every orbit has its gentle shape, every minute has a purpose, and the command module carries on with its low, familiar hum, circulating air, holding warmth, and keeping its lone astronaut safely afloat. While the time approaches for Eagle to rise from the lunar surface, fact number 83 is that the Apollo 11 lunar module Eagle had two main sections: the descent stage, which carried it down to the moon and remained there, and the ascent stage, which carried Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin back into lunar orbit after their time on the surface. The lower portion of Eagle stayed resting in the fine gray dust of the Sea of Tranquility, beneath a sky that would never become blue, and beneath sunlight that moved slowly, slowly across the plain. Above it, the ascent stage prepared to leave, becoming a small, carefully made vessel, ready to lift two people away from the quiet ground and carry them toward their companion in Columbia. Yet in this relaxing story, there is no need to imagine a loud departure, because sound cannot travel through the moon's near-empty atmosphere. From a distance, the ascent would unfold in complete outer silence, a small bright craft moving upward through the black sky, while the old lunar landscape remained still beneath it. Fact number 84 is that the moon has no substantial atmosphere to carry ordinary sound, meaning that a rocket engine firing on the lunar surface would not create the rolling roar heard from a launch on Earth by anyone standing outside without a radio or a suit. Inside Eagle, Armstrong and Aldrin would hear the gentle, practical sounds of their systems and their own calm voices, while beyond the walls, the lunar world would remain perfectly quiet. This is a peaceful thought to carry with you now. Even movement can be silent. Even a journey can unfold without disturbance. And even the great distance between two small spacecraft can be crossed in a patient, measured way. Columbia continues along its orbit, passing once more into shadow and then toward sunlight, while the moon's horizon curves below like the rim of an ancient sleeping bowl. Fact number 85 is that the lunar module and command module had to match their paths in orbit before they could meet, because spacecraft traveling around the moon move according to their altitude, speed, and direction. This meeting, called rendezvous, was carefully planned long before Apollo 11 left Earth, with guidance systems, radio communication, and human skill all working together to make the two paths gradually become one. From far away, though, the idea can feel as serene as two slow drifting lanterns moving across a dark lake, each following a calm, invisible line, until they come close enough to share the same gentle space. Eagle rises from the moon and enters lunar orbit carrying the dust of the Sea of Tranquility only in memory, while the descent stage remains below, quiet and undisturbed. Fact number 86 is that the Apollo 11 ascent stage docked with Columbia in lunar orbit on July 21, 1969, allowing Armstrong and Aldrin to return safely to the command module and rejoin Collins once the spacecraft were together again. 3 astronauts were reunited in the small cabin, bringing their separate paths back into one shared journey toward Earth. You may imagine that reunion not as something hurried, but as a soft return. Familiar voices close again, familiar faces floating in warm cabin light, and the steady awareness that the long lunar day had reached a peaceful turning point. In weightlessness, the crew could move gently through the connecting tunnel, carrying equipment, samples, and the quiet experiences of the moon back into Columbia. Fact number 87 is that Apollo 11 brought lunar rocks and soil back to Earth, including samples from the Sea of Tranquility that later helped scientists learn about the moon's volcanic history, surface materials, and ancient past. These small stones had rested on the lunar surface for unimaginably long spans of time before being carefully gathered by human hands. They carried no sound, no urgency, and no message in words, only the quiet evidence of a world that had formed, cooled, and waited beneath the stars. Soon, the astronauts would prepare Columbia for the homeward journey, leaving the moon behind with its craters, plains, shadows, and patient silence. Fact number 88 is that after the crew had transferred back into Columbia, the lunar module's ascent stage separated from the command module, while Columbia remained the spacecraft designed to carry all 3 astronauts safely back to Earth. But the journey home need not begin all at once in our bedtime story. For a little longer, let Columbia remain in its peaceful orbit, now holding 3 travelers together again, with Earth glowing in the distance and the moon lying quietly beneath them. The cabin feels a little fuller now, but it is still warm, protected, and calm. The astronauts have returned from the lunar surface. The old Sea of Tranquility rests below in everlasting stillness, and the familiar blue world waits patiently beyond the dark. Let your own thoughts return to quietness in the same way, gathering gently into one safe place. Let your breathing become slow and even. Let the imagined hum of Columbia soften until it is almost part of the silence. There is nothing to carry now except this calm, floating moment as the 3 astronauts rest together above the moon, and the night grows deeper, gentler, and more ready to receive you into sleep. Now that the 3 astronauts are together again inside Columbia, the little command module feels complete. Its warm cabin, holding familiar voices, carefully secured lunar samples, softly glowing panels, and the quiet shared understanding that the moon has offered its ancient welcome, and that Earth is waiting patiently beyond the darkness. Below, the lunar surface continues to turn in its slow and silent way, with the Sea of Tranquility far behind, pale highlands slipping beneath the spacecraft, and crater rims catching the distant sunlight as though they have been gently brushed with silver. The moon does not ask the astronauts to stay, and the astronauts do not need to hurry away. For a final peaceful while, Columbia follows its orbit, carried by the same invisible gravity that has guided every smooth circle around this quiet world. Fact number 89 is that Apollo missions left lunar orbit through a carefully timed maneuver called trans-Earth injection, in which the spacecraft's main engine changed its path from circling the moon to beginning a long, graceful coast back toward Earth. The engine burn itself was brief, but its effect was lasting, placing Columbia on a wide, curved route through the darkness, with the moon slowly falling behind and the blue planet ahead beginning, little by little, to grow larger. In this gentle bedtime story, we do not need to focus on the power of the engine or the calculations behind the maneuver. Instead, imagine the moment afterward, when the work has been done and the cabin returns to its familiar hush, when the moon is no longer directly beneath the windows, and when the astronauts find themselves once again floating quietly between two worlds. Fact number 90 is that Apollo 11 began its journey home from the moon on July 22, 1969. After completing its lunar orbit operations and preparing Columbia for the return voyage, the path home was not a straight line, because gravity shaped it into a long, elegant arc, drawing the spacecraft gradually toward Earth as the moon's influence gently receded. This is a comforting kind of travel, not a race through darkness, but a patient coast guided by the dependable order of the universe. You may imagine Columbia moving onward now, with the moon becoming smaller behind it, soft gray and quiet, while Earth slowly brightens ahead like a lamp in the window of a home seen from a great distance. Inside the command module, the astronauts can rest more easily after the many careful tasks of lunar orbit. Their equipment is arranged, their route is set, and the broad space between the moon and Earth stretches before them with no roads, no traffic, and no sounds except the muted life of the cabin. Fact number 91 is that during the return coast, Apollo crews had periods for sleep, meals, navigation checks, conversations with Earth, and simple observation through the spacecraft windows. The voyage contained not only historic moments, but ordinary human moments as well. A sip of water, a quiet laugh among crewmates, a glance toward Earth, a few peaceful minutes with nothing required except waiting. Let your own night become like one of those quiet minutes. There's no need to arrive anywhere immediately. You may let yourself coast gently toward rest, trusting that sleep knows the way without being chased. The moon has become a distant companion now, still visible perhaps as a softly lit sphere behind Columbia, carrying its craters, its airless plains, and the small resting remains of Eagle on the surface of the Sea of Tranquility. Fact number 92 is that the Apollo lunar landing sites remain on the moon, where spacecraft hardware, scientific instruments, and tracks in the regolith can endure for long periods, because there is no rain or wind to erase them quickly. The moon keeps these traces quietly, not as a loud monument, but as part of its still landscape, where sunlight and shadow continue their slow passage across the dust. Ahead, Earth is growing more present. Its oceans reflect sunlight in gentle blues. Clouds clouds form white spirals over the planet, and the thin atmosphere wraps the whole world in a delicate edge of color. Fact number 93 is that as Apollo spacecraft approached Earth, the planet gradually appeared larger in the windows, changing from a small, distant sphere into the vast home world toward which the crew was returning. To the astronauts, Earth must have seemed both familiar and newly beautiful. A place of air, weather, birdsong, rain, trees, voices, and countless sleeping people, all held together beneath one fragile-looking blue sky. Yet Columbia remains far away for now, drifting in the quiet middle distance, where the stars are steady and the sunlight is clean and bright. The astronauts might turn their attention toward photography, system checks, or the simple wonder of watching Earth grow. But no action needs to disturb the calm of this moment. Fact number 94 is that the command module was the only part of the Apollo spacecraft designed to return safely through Earth's atmosphere, carrying the crew home beneath the protection of its heat shield. The service module, which provided power and propulsion during much of the journey, would later separate before re-entry. After quietly supporting Columbia across the long path from the moon, but that final return is still far ahead in our soft nighttime story. For now, the spacecraft is simply coasting, protected and peaceful, with the moon behind, Earth ahead, and the enormous darkness around it feeling less like emptiness and more like a velvet space in which every hurried thought can finally loosen and fade. Let your breathing follow the slow shape of Columbia's journey. Breathe in as Earth becomes a little nearer. Breathe out as the moon becomes a little farther away. Let the concerns of the day recede in the same gentle way, becoming smaller, quieter, and less distinct. You are safe in your own warm resting place, while Columbia continues its calm path home through the stars, carrying 3 astronauts, a small collection of lunar stones, and the soft silence of the moon toward the waiting blue world. Columbia now travels along its long, quiet arc between the moon and Earth, and with every gentle hour of coasting, the blue world ahead becomes a little larger in the command module windows. No longer merely a small lamp in the dark, but a living sphere of cloud, ocean, and soft, reflected sunlight, waiting with patient familiarity at the end of the astronauts' peaceful journey. Inside the cabin, the 3 travelers float among their secured equipment and carefully stored lunar samples, surrounded by the same low hum of air and machinery that has accompanied them since leaving Earth, while the moon rests farther behind them, pale and distant, carrying the stillness of the Sea of Tranquility beneath its slow-moving sunlight. Fact number 95 is that Apollo astronauts photographed Earth during their return journeys, capturing views of the planet as a whole, with swirling weather systems, deep blue oceans, and the delicate thinness of the atmosphere visible around its curved edge. From so far away, Earth appears complete and calm, with no visible boundaries and no sign of the countless separate routines unfolding below its clouds. There are people beginning their mornings, people preparing their evening meals, and people already sleeping in quiet rooms, all together on one softly glowing sphere. Let that thought become peaceful rather than large. Every concern that may still be waiting for you can remain safely on the far side of tomorrow. While this gentle bedtime story gives you permission to rest here now, in the calm middle of the night, the command module needs very little from the astronauts during this portion of the voyage, because its main course has already been shaped by the carefully timed departure from lunar orbit and by Earth's steady pull. Fact number 96 is that Apollo return trajectories were planned so that Earth's gravity would draw the spacecraft home, while the crew and mission controllers made navigation checks and occasional small corrections as needed. The path is a long curve rather than a straight line, smooth and spacious, like a slow ribbon laid across the darkness between two familiar worlds. You may imagine that Columbia is resting upon that invisible curve, carried forward without strain, while your own body rests on the quiet support beneath you. There is nothing you need to steer. You do not need to keep watch. You can simply let each breath arrive and leave, like the gentle changing distance between the spacecraft and Earth. Fact number 97 is that the Apollo crews used the command module's windows to observe Earth, the moon, the sun, and the stars, while carefully controlling the spacecraft's orientation to manage sunlight and temperature. At times, the spacecraft could slowly rotate in a maneuver often called a barbecue roll, allowing sunlight to warm its surfaces more evenly instead of heating one side for too long. In our quiet imagination, this slow turn is almost imperceptible, a peaceful rotation through the dark, with Earth appearing to shift gently in the window, and the stars holding their steady places beyond it. There is no rush in this motion. The spacecraft turns, the light changes, and the cabin remains a small, warm home, drifting safely through the night. Fact number 98 is that Earth's atmosphere is the layer that made Apollo's final return possible. Because the command module could use the resistance of air to slow from its enormous speed as it came home. Before that final moment, however, Columbia continues to coast through the calm of space, where there is no wind against the hull, no sound outside the spacecraft, and no sign that the world ahead is becoming larger, except the changing view through the glass. The heat shield waits quietly below the cabin, prepared for its later task. But tonight, it can remain only a comforting thought, a strong protective layer, already in place, already ready, allowing the astronauts to travel onward with confidence. Earth grows gradually brighter, and the white cloud bands become more detailed, curving around blue oceans and broad stretches of land hidden beneath weather. Fact number 99 is that from space, the atmosphere appears as a very thin blue line around Earth, a reminder that the air supporting life is only a delicate layer surrounding a much larger world. It is easy to picture the astronauts looking toward that blue edge and thinking of the first breath of open Earth air waiting at the end of their mission, of rain, trees, waves, and the familiar changing weather that the moon has never known. Yet for now, all those earthly sounds remain distant and gentle, softened by the great quiet of the journey. The cabin is still their small floating room, and the universe around it is still wide enough for every thought to become quiet. Fact number 100 is that Apollo 11 returned to Earth on July 24, 1969, splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean after its voyage to the Moon and back. The mission's final arrival was made possible by the patient sequence of its journey, leaving Earth, crossing cislunar space, orbiting the Moon, reuniting in lunar orbit, and following the long, curved path home. But the ocean is still ahead in this nighttime story, and there's no reason to arrive there yet. For a little longer, Columbia may remain in the peaceful darkness, where Earth grows nearer at exactly the right pace, and the Moon becomes a quiet pearl far behind. Let the words become less distinct now, like distant radio voices softened by space. Let your muscles grow heavier, even as the astronauts float. Let the day slip away, becoming as small as the Moon in a far window. There's only the low imagined hum of the command module, the blue world waiting ahead, and the slow, reliable motion toward gentle bedtime, toward calm, and toward the deep sleep that can find you without effort. Earth now fills more of Columbia's windows, not all at once, not in any way that interrupts the softness of the journey, but gradually, patiently, as if the blue world has been drifting closer through the darkness, with the same calm purpose that has carried the astronauts from launch through lunar orbit and onto this long, peaceful path home. The white clouds are easier to see now, spread in slow, curling patterns over the deep oceans, and the thin blue line of atmosphere rests around the planet like the faint edge of morning light beneath a closed curtain inside the command module. Nothing needs to be hurried. The lunar samples remain safely stored. The instruments give their quiet glow. The 3 astronauts float in their familiar cabin, still surrounded by the small sounds of circulating air and the gentle mechanical rhythm that has become, over the course of the mission, almost like a lullaby. Outside, there is only the great silence of space, uninterrupted by wind, weather, or waves. And yet ahead waits a world full of those sounds. Rain arriving on quiet roofs, leaves moving in a mild evening breeze, water folding onto distant shores, and countless people breathing softly in rooms lit by the last lamps of the day. For now, however, Earth is still far enough away to seem completely peaceful, a round and shining home held in darkness. The astronauts know that the return is approaching, but the final moments of the voyage do not need to enter this gentle bedtime story quickly. We may remain here in the calm before arrival, where Columbia continues to coast with the same smooth grace that has carried it all along. Imagine the spacecraft turning very slowly, so slowly that the movement is almost impossible to notice, while sunlight shifts softly along the outer hull and the stars remain fixed beyond the windows. The Moon is now far behind, reduced to a pale, distant companion, still carrying its silent craters, its motionless dust, and the quiet landing site where Eagle's descent stage rests beneath the long lunar day. Nothing on the Moon rushes after Columbia. Nothing pulls at the astronauts' attention. The old gray world simply remains where it has always been, circling Earth in its patient way, keeping the gentle marks of Apollo within its airless stillness. In the cabin, perhaps one astronaut looks back for a final moment, seeing the Moon as a small pearl against the black. Perhaps another looks forward, toward the blue planet that is slowly becoming too large to hold in one glance, and perhaps the third simply rests, floating peacefully between the memory of one world and the welcome of another. This is the calm threshold between journeys, where the remarkable becomes ordinary again, and where even a voyage to the moon can settle into the simple human wish to return home. Let that feeling be gentle for you too. You do not need to cross any distance tonight. You do not need to prepare for tomorrow or solve anything waiting beyond sleep. Your only journey is inward, toward a quieter place beneath your thoughts, where the mind can become as soft as the dark sky around Columbia. If a thought tries to return, imagine it as a distant piece of lunar dust, resting harmlessly on a gray plain far below an old horizon. If a concern feels close, imagine placing it carefully into a small storage compartment in the command module, fastening the door and allowing it to remain there until morning. There is no need to carry it through the night. The spacecraft itself is already carrying enough. 3 quiet travelers, the memory of the moon, a collection of ancient stones, and the peaceful certainty of a course leading home. Head, Earth slowly turns, presenting its oceans and clouds to the sun. Somewhere beneath those clouds, the Pacific Ocean waits in wide blue silence, moving with gentle swells that no one inside Columbia can yet hear. Somewhere, coastal winds pass over the water. Somewhere, night settles over a sleeping shoreline. But here, in the cabin, all of that remains distant and softened by space. The astronauts are still weightless. Their bodies float without pressure. Their sleeping bags wait securely against the cabin walls. Their voices, if they speak at all, may be low and unhurried, carried only a short distance through the warm air between them. It is easy to imagine the comfort of that small shared space after so much darkness. The dependable presence of companions nearby, the quiet familiarity of each instrument panel, the knowledge that Earth is growing nearer with every passing hour. Let your own surroundings take on that same feeling of gentle familiarity. Let your bed be your command module, your blanket be the protective cabin wall, and the darkness beyond your eyelids be the wide, velvet quiet through which Columbia is drifting. You are not required to stay awake for the next chapter of the journey. The spacecraft knows its way. Earth knows how to receive it. The night knows how to deepen around you, and sleep, like the blue planet in Columbia's window, can come closer slowly, softly, and without ever needing to be forced. And now, dear listener, Columbia has come very near to Earth, and the blue world that once appeared as a small, tender light beyond the moon has become large and luminous in the command module windows. Its oceans deep and peaceful beneath long spirals of white cloud. Its thin atmosphere glowing softly around the curve of the planet, like the gentle edge of dawn beneath a sleeping sky. Inside the cabin, the astronauts have completed their long voyage through lunar darkness, carrying with them quiet memories of the Sea of Tranquility, of the far side's sheltered silence, of Earthrise over old gray mountains, and of the many slow orbits that taught them how calm the universe can be when there is nothing to do except drift, observe, breathe, and wait. Soon, Columbia will begin the final part of its homeward return, leaving the open stillness of space and moving toward the welcoming air of Earth. But there is no need to follow every detail now, because this is the gentle ending of our sleep story, and all journeys are allowed to soften at their edges. The heat shield beneath the command module is ready, strong, and quiet, prepared to protect the crew as they return through the atmosphere, while the ocean waits far below beneath its patient cover of clouds. Yet before the brightness of return, before the movement of waves and the familiar voices of home, there is one last peaceful moment in the cabin, a moment suspended between the silent moon behind them and the blue earth ahead. Imagine the astronauts floating gently together, surrounded by the dim glow of their instruments, with no need for many words. Their work has been done with care. Their path has brought them safely homeward. The quiet machinery continues its low, reassuring hum, and the stars beyond the windows begin to fade from attention as Earth fills more of the view. Let that same sense of completion settle around you now. The things you needed to do today have reached their own far horizon. The conversations, plans, questions, and small unfinished tasks can rest where they are, safely held beyond the closed door of this night. You do not need to solve them while you are here. You do not need to carry them farther. Just as Columbia leaves the moon behind without erasing it, you may leave the day behind without needing to fight it. It can remain a quiet silver world in the distance, full of moments that have already passed, while you travel onward toward rest. Feel the surface beneath you, steady and kind, supporting you as surely as Columbia's carefully built cabin supported its crew. Feel the warmth around you, perhaps in your blanket, perhaps in the quiet air of your room, perhaps simply in the soft heaviness gathering in your arms and legs. Let your shoulders sink a little more. Let your jaw become loose. Let the space behind your eyes become wide, dark, and velvety, like the peaceful sky that surrounded Apollo on its long journey between Earth and Moon. There is no wind in that imagined darkness, no sound outside the spacecraft, no need to be alert for anything at all. There is only the gentle hum, the slow breath, and the distant blue glow of home. As Columbia descends in our imagination, let the details grow softer. The bright planet becomes a blur of blue and white. The quiet cabin lights become small, warm stars. The moon becomes a pale memory far behind, resting in its ancient stillness, keeping its craters, its dust, and its calm gray plains beneath the patient light of the sun. Somewhere on that distant surface, the Sea of Tranquility remains exactly as it was, silent and undisturbed. Somewhere above it, Earth continues to hang in the lunar sky, blue and gentle. A little world filled with rain, music, forests, warm kitchens, quiet bedrooms, and people slowly falling asleep. And here, in your own small safe place, you may join them. Let each breath become quieter than the one before it. Breathe in softly, as though you are taking in the calm blue light of Earth. Breathe out slowly, as though you are releasing every remaining thought into the harmless darkness of space. There is nothing left to hold tightly. There is no need to remember every fact, every chapter, every silent orbit. The facts may rest now, like lunar stones safely stored away, while the feeling of the journey remains. The feeling of floating, of being carried, of seeing home from far away, and of realizing that even the largest universe can contain moments of deep and tender peace. The imagined hum of Columbia is becoming more distant now. The gentle bedtime story is becoming quieter. The words are slowing, softening, and drifting apart, like stars viewed through tired eyes. Earth is below. The moon is behind. The quiet spacecraft has done its work. And you may do nothing at all. Simply rest. Simply float. Simply allow yourself to fall asleep, slowly and naturally, into the deep, calm darkness that holds you safely through the night.